queued up to talk here. Let's give them a round of applause.
Okay, it's definitely not developing with a gamepad API.
I'm sorry, Jacob.
That's okay. Can I switch like tabs?
You're in a Chrome browser. Put your mouse at the top.
Okay, sweet.
There you go.
I just wanted to see if it will run. Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm demoing like a map side project that I've been working on for a while. I've been doing like map related, I guess, apps for a long time. And I just got off of, like 3 months ago, I quit working on a mobile app that I've been working on for a long time. It was a bass fishing app, and the core of it used Mapbox. And I was getting the itch to like go beyond what Mapbox could support. And so as a side project, I've been working on my own sort of map rendering SDK, and I can show it. And this is where I'm at. I'll just show some of the layers here. This is using WebGPU for the rendering. And I'll turn on and off so you can see this is a tile-based map SDK. So these tiles are loading as I'm like panning and zooming. And I have some basic label rendering, some buildings, some lines. It's hard to demo the buildings because it can't really zoom in that much, but let's see. I think Seattle has some buildings. They look quite odd, but they're there. And yeah, I wanted to show you, sort of talk about a few things that's going on here. And so first, I was demoing this, and somebody asked me immediately, well, what is WebGPU? And so this is trying to put that in context. So WebGPU is just another GPU rendering API. And so I broke it down into modern versus classic. But if some of you are old enough, there's like more levels to this that keep going back. But the modern side is what we ideally target today, and they're sort of thinner APIs that closer match to the paradigm that the GPU driver used to do for you. And so now you're doing more of what the GPU driver did. It matches more the paradigm of how the GPU operates. And so with WebGPU, what that means, it'll be less CPU overhead. And so if you port something from like WebGL to WebGPU, you get free CPU time. And so this isn't exactly accurate, but it's roughly like platform specific. The cross-platform stuff, Apple deprecated OpenGL and no longer supports Vulkan, so not exactly cross-platform. And WebGL sort of matches one of the OpenGL ES versions, or two of the OpenGL ES versions. WebGPU is a little different. They sort of wrote it. I wouldn't say from scratch. It resembles these other APIs, but it's not. You can't just point to one and say it looks like that. But yeah. And so the core of the project is a Rust component that's compiled to WebAssembly. And then I'm showing how I wrap that map component with a JavaScript component. And so that has a canvas, which that canvas ends up being the surface that we pass to WebGPU to render to. And there's an interface to go into that map that gets generated, and I'll show that in a second. But I have these like JavaScript APIs that call into this Rust WebAssembly module. And I use WasmPack to build the WebAssembly module. And I use this tool, WasmBindGen. WasmPack is a Rust thing. WasmBindGen is a thing that works with pretty much every language. And it helps you generate interfaces, and it generates these JavaScript wrapper functions for you, and types. And so in this example, I have this like map struct in Rust, and here's an example like handle mouse move function, and here's what that gets translated or generated. This is generated code on the right, and there's a lot more generated code than just what you expose. There's a bunch of other stuff that WasmPack builds to manage memory to make different, more than just like primitives, easier to pass through. And there's like a bunch of the map data processing that is happening behind the scenes. And so these circles represent sort of what I'm doing with like custom processing and some of the layers that where this data comes from. I'm doing some processing, and then the map's like loading some of these pre-baked stuff. Sort of a bit of a mess. Like I have like a Lambda function. I have some stuff stored in R2. It's just all over the place. But and then some processing, like more than you would think happens also on the client as it's loading. And so that proto maps with this like vector tile that gets decompressed, and I start stripping stuff out, and then I process it to like render over the 3D terrain, for example. And where I'm going with this is I liked working on weather stuff in the past, and so I'd like to build like a weather app, and so I just got like a static single radar frame visible. And so it's like got a fancy, little shadow, but it's also like not see-through, so it's like hard to interpret what you're looking at. But yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Extremely cool.
Great job. That was a great talk.
And you probably want to close that tab.
Is it gonna melt my computer? My computer is already at 27% battery. All right, it's closed. Great job. Thank you, Jacob. I'm gonna talk next for. I'm gonna set my timer for 7 minutes, which I forgot to do just now, but it was not a problem. And I want to talk for a minute about browsers. Browsers, I think, are really, really exciting and cool. And it's the environment that all of our JavaScript code is executed in. And right now is a really interesting time for browsers because we suddenly have all of these different browsers popping up that are trying to steal market share away from Chrome. There's the whole drama with Google might be forced to sell Chrome because they've been deemed a monopoly in like the ad space and all of this stuff. And in the meantime, there's all of these companies that are popping up with various AI like enabled browsers. Raise your hand. Has anyone tried an AI enabled browser in the room? Wow, not as many as I thought. That's exciting. Well, I'm here to tell you they're not that exciting. But essentially they are all just wrappers of Chromium with chatbots pinned to the side. The three ones that I have here pulled up to talk through today are Dia, Comet, and then the one that was released today, which is, I don't even remember the name of it. It's the ChatGPT one, which is called Atlas. Thank you. So Dia, if you're not familiar, it's made by the browser company. The browser company first had their browser called Arc that they were really invested in, and it was like this really exciting like new way to browse their web. And then Dia realized, or the browser company realized, we could make so much more money if this is an AI product. And so they completely pivoted, and they were like, fuck Arc, we're investing in Dia now. And then you know what? It did work, because the browser company got acquired by Atlassian. So this is now an Atlassian product, which is something. We're gonna say search the web, hold on, for cat photos. All right, so I'm just curious. I have not used the chat boxes in here as much as I would like to have before sitting up here and talk about this. But what I expect it to do is to use the open Google page that is right here, and instead it didn't do that. It just said top free cat photos. All right, well let's try a different one because they all basically are doing the exact same thing. So this is Perplexity's Comet. If you're not familiar with Perplexity, it's just another AI company. I really truly don't know what their special offering is. But they also have this browser that it's been invite only for a while, so it's hard to get into. But it is, as you can see, the exact same thing. So we're gonna say, search the web for cat photos. And let's see, oh my goodness, it's gonna use Google, maybe. I'll search the web for cat photos for you. And then it doesn't use the Google search input. That's right there. All right, Unsplash. Unsplash's cute cat section. Nice. The Library of Congress? Okay. Well, this is disappointing. This isn't, here, let's try again. Can you use the Google search box to do this? What'd you say?
You're going to get banned.
I'm going to get banned? For doing what?
You will use the word Google.
Wait, why am I going to get banned? Okay. Hey? Nice. All right. It's using the internet, guys. Oh, whoa. All right. Well, there you go. Comet's winning right now. Now we're going to switch over. Oh, wait, look. Dia did end up pulling up cat photos on the Library of Congress. Interesting. All right, now we're gonna go over to ChatGPT Atlas. This was released today. It is brand new. It is still macOS only, but I have not. I installed it preparing for this. So let's see what it does. Search the web for cat photos using this page. All right, I gave it an advantage by telling I can't perform a web search directly through Google's page itself. Why not? Okay. Search the web to show you top cat photo sites or show cat images directly. Why not? Why you? Okay. Why can't you use the page? Good question. Here's what's happening. Even though you're looking at Google homepage, I can't actually click or type on the live web page like a human would. I can see the page's content. I can't press Google search. I can perform the same search itself. What? What is chat? What is this? Okay. What are you good for? I thought that this is what it's designed to do. Here's what I'm good for, web searches, okay. Okay, search on my behalf then. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, it did pull up cat photos, but it's still not using the open Google page. Interesting. Well, I don't know. I'm not convinced. What else, any other ideas for what I should try here? Good response. What'd you say? Let's see. Can you tell me who is logged into Google on this page? There's some, oh, look, the name is Joe Gersberg, and there's my email. There you go. It's only visible because it's part of the Google homepage HTML that's open in your browser. I don't have any access to any private data beyond what's already shown on the page. Well, interesting. I am disappointed. This is not exciting, but it is. These are browsers with chat box. This is new. This is where the industry is going. How long until Chromium ships with a chatbot? That's all that I'm going to talk about. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Next, we've got Riley, who's got his own laptop, so my laptop can die. Give a hand for Riley! There you go.
All right. I always find it interesting to just see what other people's setups are like, so I figured I would just show everybody my Claude Code custom agents and commands setup, which I've been playing around with. To kind of start from the beginning, because some people might not know that you can configure these things, but you can actually tailor and kind of like hack into Claude Code your own settings, and it actually makes it a lot more powerful and works in the way that you would want it to work. And so if you haven't done anything like that, I would play around with it. After this talk, I should probably put all the stuff I'm going to show you on GitHub, and if you hit me up on LinkedIn, I'll send you a link to it. You can start from just all the markdown files that I have, but to start, I'll just go through kind of like the Claude Code. This would be at ~/.claude folder on your computer, and then Claude Code will automatically find these files here. And I don't know how to get this thing off here. But you have two main folders that you can work in right now. One is agents, one is commands. And then there's also these settings area here that you can kind of play around with and change. The main things I'm going to be going over, though, are agents and commands. So agents would be invoking custom kind of like contextual agents that will execute the commands that that will execute against the specific ask that you have of it. So it's kind of like building the context to perform the task that you want. So what I have here is I have like a bug hunter if I have something that's kind of tricky for me to debug and I want Claude Code to do it. I have kind of these sets of guardrails and tools that it should try first before going through things. So you can even go through and tell it to look into the editor tools to do things like look at all of the lint problems or the TypeScript things directly from the IDE if it wouldn't have done that before. Other cool things are code reviewer. Like I use this all the time for reviewing my own stuff that I'm about to put up to a pull request or a merge request if you're stuck in the GitLab system like I am at work. And so this is really helpful for having kind of like that second person to look at the changes that I'm making before I then have like a real person look at it. So this would be like my own personal version of like CodeRabbit if you use this as a service. And so I give it kind of the same kinds of things that I would look for when I'm performing a code review. So a lot of this is actually a lot of my own brain dump into these contextual agents for the specific tasks I'm doing. And so it kind of pulls it into the mindset that I would have if I were to go do some of these things. Another one is documentation writer. I'm very opinionated about the kinds of documentation things are added or not. By default, Claude Code and other coding agents generally do things that I wouldn't want, like add a comment above a variable declaration saying what it is, right? It's like completely pointless. So it's like, this will go through and say, don't do those kinds of things. Like these are all my own personal style guides on how you should or shouldn't write documentation in code or in markdown files in the repository. Performance optimizers, so another one where performance on its own is like its own skill, giving it guardrails on the specific things to look for, including trying to do profiling before it tries to optimize for performance, as well as is what you're doing adding more complexity than the win you're going to get, right? So for example, like it's easy to scrutinize like a double nested loop, right? That loops over 2 items. It's like, we can go through and make that more optimal, but are you shaving off 16 nanoseconds? Like, is that really what we should be doing here, or should we like move on to something that is actually going to yield more benefits? So going through and setting up the context for it to be able to go through and actually meaningfully debug performance issues while finding the real problems and not getting distracted by the ones that don't really matter. Refactor specialist, this is another one where I set it up to have kind of these guardrails of, I realize it's not going in the preview here, guardrails for proper refactoring. And the way I describe that is like, when I go in and refactor something, the main goal that I have initially is to not change app behavior, right? It's going in place, improving the code quality while not necessarily changing the behavior of the app. So you can have the agent have that context to go in and maybe improve a file that you have like a 2,000 line file and it's like, hey, we need to split this up into smaller pieces, but give it the guardrails to not go off and go nuts and like start refactoring things and like changing app behavior and breaking everything. So test writer, this one, if you do not have Claude writing your tests, you need to like figure that out, because it's like, I hate writing tests. Like it used to cost me about 50% of my development time was dedicated probably test writing, and that is drastically reduced. And so this is great because it can adhere to my exact test writing philosophies. So things like vanilla Claude code will go out and usually lean on both heavy mocking and unit tests over integration tests. And so this will put those guardrails in place to say like, at the only unit tests for the things that actually make sense for that, and otherwise do integration tests. Oh, by the way, on the integration tests, you're not testing implementation, you're testing behavior, right? So it helps you, the actual test generations be a lot more high quality. And then commands are really interesting. I'll just go through this one or two here, but you can put in just a slash and then the command, so like /test or /review. I happen to work in many different languages at work right now: Rust, Go, Python, and TypeScript. And so one of the things that when you're hopping around different repositories you don't necessarily own is like just run the tests, right? And so this is an interesting command where it will automatically then go in and based on the repository automatically find the proper test to run or the test script to run. So if you kind of notice that if you are in that kind of space, like obviously package.json is going to be in the TypeScript or JavaScript world. And so I'll just run a couple of these. I'm probably close to time if I were to guess. I wrote a whole completely vibe-coded application to like partially fix to show just kind of some optimization things. But for the purpose of just showing some of these commands that I have here, one would be that test, right, that we just talked about. And this is just going to initially look into this test MD and execute against this scenario here. So it was able to go through and find that it's yarn test that should be ran given this repository. If we look in here, I would imagine there's that, right? So it found it automatically, but if it was a Python, it'd probably go look for a makefile or something. Other things would be, I'll do like one more demo of like a agent, let's say like the performance optimization. So you do that with an @performance. And so you see that there is selected. So it's going to select, I'm mentioning specifically the performance optimizer, find perf issues in, and let's just pick a random file. Let's go agent. This is hard to do with one hand. Agent card. There we go. And so if you look here at the performance optimizer, it will set up this entire context for this particular session. It'll engage the actual agent, and you'll see here pop down in a second right there. It's selected the performance optimizer agent, and now it's analyzing this card for performance issues, which it does have some because I forced them in there. And then it will go through and probably tell me the like triple loops that exist, and then it will automatically pull it out and that kind of thing. But it sets it all up in the proper context of the type of performance debugging that I would do. And so, yeah, after I'll be at Zilker Brewing after, so if you guys want to talk to me about any of this stuff, let me know. Otherwise, if you find me and add me on LinkedIn, I'll put this on our repo and on GitHub, and you guys can pull it over or just reference it for your own stuff if you want to see kind of how I set up my agents and commands. That's it.
Great job. And last but certainly not least, we're back to our main program. We've got Matt Crowder to come talk to us about things and stuff. If you want the little L, we can also wire you up here. You want this? Up to you.
I'll just start with this, I guess.
Sounds good.
This is the recording, right? Yeah. And then the mic is the... Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Can you see me? Cool. How's everybody doing? I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so just a little bit about myself so that you all can feel like you connect with me on a personal level, who I am. I'm a principal engineer at Viva Systems. I am a daddy. I say daddy dentist whenever I brush my daughter's teeth. It's a reference to like Michael Scarn. So I say like, I'm daddy dentist. I'm here to say I'm about to brush your teeth in a major way. Anyway, so she's 4 and I have a son, Tristan, who is 2. I have home gym. I'm really into that. I later talk about my handle, but I'm more active in like my home gym Instagram than any sort of tech stuff. I used to be into Twitter when Twitter was Twitter, but now I'm not really into Twitter now that Twitter is not Twitter. I like to travel. My wife and I take the kids places and we go places. I walk a lot, walk my dog. I have a golden retriever who requires a lot of walking. I'm also gaming. I'm really addicted to Diablo 4 at the moment. Well, I wouldn't say addicted, but maybe I'm getting there. I'm sadly a Commanders fan right now, or right now I'm sad about it, but last year was cool. And yeah, like I said, mcrowder65, so yeah, feel happy to connect on LinkedIn or you can follow my home gym Instagram page. Okay, so I want to talk about, so I was previously a manager, did the management thing for 2 years, and then my company was cool enough where I told my manager, I was like, yeah, I'm sick of this. I'd much rather be building cool tables and forms and stuff. Funny thing, I had a report who needed help, and all we were doing was just building this big ass like FTP form. And anyways, I was like, wow, this is so much better than like not doing this. And all it was just like a silly form for FTP. So anyways, so the first thing I want to talk about, and this is what I tell my devs and now my people that I mentor, my mentees, is that the best developers are product developers, right? So you're always collaborating with your product managers to build the best product available. You're not just taking features over the wall, running with it. Oh, this is what they want. I'm just going to build it, right? You collaborate with them to create the best performance experience. in your product. Another thing is you write a lot of code. It's kind of self-explanatory. You review a lot of code, also kind of self-explanatory. And then, so one thing that I said like a while ago, and sometimes I just say randomly, and I guess here I am saying this at a meetup tonight, is like, I like the mantra, like my grader team has a good culture of something that I say is like, people have strong opinions, but they're weakly held. So it's okay to be wrong, right? You should strive to be able to have conversations with people and be proven wrong, or, accept their ideas and move forward with their ideas. I don't know if like disagree and commit is like a similar type of vibe. But anyways, like the opinions that you have should be strong, but they shouldn't be so strongly held that you can never change them, right? Especially given our current climate of, the world. It's okay to be wrong, right? And disagree with people and then eventually agree, right? Or change your mind. And then the last thing, of course, there's probably lots of other things that make devs the best. The last thing I wanted to talk about today is making other developers their best, right? So being a force multiplier. So I kind of want to just show some examples of some of the ways that I've done that for other developers on my team. Maybe just to spark some motivation or creativity in other people's repos. I really appreciated showing like the AI or like your cursor setup. Just kind of that is where I'm going for with that. Okay, and you can tell my slides are pretty vanilla. So anyways, so the first thing is ESLint rules. So every team you'll kind of find is like you have these rules in your code base, but they're not linted. And so like people will comment them in code reviews. Like, have you ever had that in code reviews? So well, we do this, but it's not linted. Like, have people had that happen, right? That it should be a rule, right? It's just a vibe, right? Like it should be, if you can't lint it, it's not perfect, right? You can't lint everything, right? And this is what I'm saying, right? It's like not everything that I say or do will be exact, right? It's like you shouldn't be so 1 or 0. But most of the time, if you can't lint it, then it's like, should it even be a rule? Like you should strive to lint it. And it's inevitable that people are gonna break that rule. And if it's really that important, like you should be checking for it. So like really all you do is you just say, hey, Jippity, can you just like write this ESLint rule and give me unit tests for it? And it gets it wrong a couple times, and you say, wait, no, what about this use case? And then you just keep doing that for like about an hour or so, and then you're able to just have some custom rules that that like needs to do for like whatever your code base. So so the first thing I want to talk about is TanStack query. So here, raise of hands, like generally familiar with TanStack query. Cool. Okay. So one of the things that I noticed in our code base, so TanStack query is good for managing server state. And one of the things we realized is people were reusing queries, and they were putting enabled false on the queries which will technically, like, if there's something in the query cache, it's going to get the thing in the query cache. But what happens if somebody deletes the original query, then you're kind of screwed. So let's walk through just a quick little example here. So, how this is life of a presenter is everything super contrived, right? So you're like, Matt, why don't you just pass this in as a prop? It's like, well, then the point would be defeated, right? So imagine, you see WebStorm, yeah? Let me zoom in, yeah. Zoom into my superior white editor, light-themed WebStorm editor. I've heard it's better for presenting, I don't know. Maybe it's because I did Eclipse, which is all light-themed in college, and I just never left. I'm an addict, like I said. Okay, so here we have this super contrived example where we have this parent foo. So we have this data, we say this use query, and TanStack query v5, it's been out for like a year. It has this whole thing with like these query options. So it's just this composable way to like reuse queries throughout your code base. It's nice because this query, like all this is type checked. So like, because I returned foo here, like it knows when you do like query client.setQuery data, if you pass in options.query key, it will like type check your, the cache. So anyways, so we have this parent component that is fetching this thing and it's just returning foo. But imagine this is, this is a network request, right? And so if you, open the page, you can see query fn here, right? So that it's getting called, we know it's getting called. And then, obviously this is contrived, but assume it's not contrived. And you have like you have like 12 layers deep down like in some dashboard where you want to read that same data, right? So it's like you have a couple options. It's like, ideally the best option is you just use the same query, right? But you don't want to call it again. So this is what's happening here is like once you display foo, I'm not doing anything with like the stale time to like not refetch that query. So that's why you see query fn running every single time you toggle display. So anyways, so what I found developers were doing in my code base was they were doing enabled false. Oh, that's the wrong one. Live coding. So they wouldn't put it on the query options. You put it on like the thing that's using your query options, like on that child. So you see here, if I say toggle display, query function is never, or query fn never displays again because it's enabled false. But then, like you're in these enterprise code bases, right? It's like, it's easy maybe if it's just you or it's like a really small knit team, but we have 9 web devs, and we have a lot of code. So if somebody happened to like delete the parent just like thing that was calling that, and just because the product needed that, like you're kind of just screwed where child will never display, right? Because that parent query never got called. So that was just a small example. I said, oh, you know what? The better solution here to not like call query fn again is to just set stale time infinity. And you can see here, if this gets deleted, it's still going to call that, it'll still call query fn, and then it's calling it every time, which is still probably better here because that's probably like what you want, but if you didn't want it to call all the time, you could set gc time to a higher value. But that's not the point. So anyways, so I told ChatGPT, I was like, hey, write me a lint rule. It says like, you can't set enabled : false directly. Like people can dynamically disable a query like with a variable because that's a use case, right? Like you're like, oh, based on some other thing, I want to wait for this data to be ready and then enable it. But just saying enabled false, that is not allowed. So I don't have a cool AI browser to do it for me, but yeah. So when you're doing this, make sure you're not giving them any like your social security number and stuff. But that was a joke. Anyway, so. What's good when you write, because I'm not going to like show like, hey, how do you like enable the custom ESLint rules, but when you're writing custom ESLint rules, it's really good to get a before and after. So making sure you can add like a time equals 1, and then it will give you a big table of like how long each rule took to run. So it'd be good before you write your rule to do that, capture that, and then write your rule, and then see the difference between the two, make sure you don't have any big differences. So anyways, yeah, I mean, the whole thing with these ESLint rules is like, and we're going to be talking more about ASTs. Do people know what an AST is, an abstract syntax tree? Yeah, so there's this thing called AST. Yeah, ASTexplorer.org. .net. Yeah, so you see this code right here, this JavaScript code, and it represents this as a tree. And this is how, abstract syntax tree. This is how it like interprets your code. Like that's what ESLint is doing. So anyway, so becoming more familiar with those will help with this and like writing your own rules. But now you don't really have to because you could just get your robots to write it. So anyways, the whole thing that it's doing in this thing is it has these like, hey, do you have a use query, use infinite query, query options, use queries, and then it's looking somewhere around here and it's finding the enabled flag somewhere in here. Oh yeah, enabled property. Yeah, so it's like, it's looking at that object and then it's saying, hey, find the enabled, and then if enabled is directly set to false, then freak out. And then you can see, for whatever reason, my test is in TypeScript, but my source is in JavaScript. Probably because it's a monorepo. But anyways, so it's nice you tell your robot, say, hey, give me a bunch of these valid test cases. Or say, hey, this is valid. You could just say enabled true. Or you could say, oh, I have this external arg to set it to be true and everything. And then here's all these, like, it's not valid where you have these, like, use query. So yeah, and then I disabled it just not to, I guess, distract from this thing. Oh yeah, let me add that back. So now, so lint rules could be like, hey, don't do that. Like, use stale time infinity to prevent automatic fetching. Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah, and then I haven't come across an example yet. It's been in the production. Well, let me check the Git history. I added this, like 10 months ago. I haven't come across an example where anybody has had like a valid use case for it. And then you always have the fallback of ESLint disable next line. Just add that everywhere, right? Just kidding, don't everywhere. But like, it's good to collaborate with your teammates. Be like, should I add this? Should this be here or should it not? So yeah, now let's go to the next. So kind of talking more about just like another TANSTAT query thing so query keys. So the cool thing about TANSTAT query is that it will the query key, it automatically checks that you are using any variables that are in this thing. I don't know if I did plus va const va equals 1. It might not do this because it's not in a hook. But anyways, if this wasn't a reusable function and I had 2 hands, I would show you that the query key, it would give you a lint rule and be like, hey, va is not in here. I can't have 2 hands. All right, let's do it. Okay. All right. Wait, can you still hear me fine? Okay. And probably it's not as loud. Anyway, so if I said va number, and then this was foo plus va. Now this query key is going to be like, hey, you're missing va, right? Which, va is a really common placeholder variable name. Anyways, so that's good, right? Because say you have, let's change this to be ID, right? So you have user ID, you have user 1 is ID, 1, and then user 2 is 2, and they log out, log back in, or whatever. It just handles your query key magic for you, right? It's not going to, obviously you should be, patient. If you're displaying data, you shouldn't be doing that. You should hopefully be clearing your query cache completely. Wiping it all out upon patient or people relogging in. So anyways, we have use cases in our code base where there is kind of identifying information, but it's sent as headers in the request and not arguments in the request, in the request body. So what we found was we found people using static query keys because the TANSTAT query lint rule wasn't catching it. So I didn't really say what I do at Viva Systems. So now I will say what I do is that I do a clinical trial, remote clinical trial platform. So it's your sponsors that build the trials. So that is it's just a bunch of surveys and events that get triggered and stuff. And then a site who so that is your Moderna, Pfizer is your sponsor, and then your site could be a local Walgreens or doctor's office, and then they'll sign you up for the site, or maybe you'll sign you up for the study. Maybe they'll take some surveys on your behalf. You take surveys there, and then there's also the patient experience where you you could just take surveys on your own device. So anyways, what we've noticed is when we have in our sponsors, when they are getting their list of studies, the request for that, for whatever reason, the requirement with the back end was that they really wanted it as a header and they couldn't do it as a query param. And it had something to do with our GraphQL queries, just guaranteeing it was a lot easier to do the authorization check that they have permission to do that, and the auth filter to make it a header. So anyways, we can't just rewrite those GraphQL queries and mutations, say, hey, start accepting this, even though they're not going to do anything with it. So what we did was I wrote another, I didn't write the rule. Somebody else wrote the rule, clearly. So now I'll get rid of this thing. So anyways, it will, foobar. So this will complain and be you should have a dynamic variable. And again, this is I haven't, it's pretty, most of the time people, I don't know if people really end up disabling it. Well, we use PSPDF kit, if people heard of that, or Nutrient SDK. That was one that it didn't make sense to have a dynamic, because when we loaded it, we just used I don't know why they used TANSTAT query to load it, but they did, and that it didn't make sense to use like a dynamic query key for that. Yeah, any questions on this? Okay. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so to-do checker. So more ESLint. So you ever have situations where you're like working through your code and you have a to-do and you write a to-do in the code and then you forgot to and others didn't see it in your code base, like in your code review. So anybody have ever happen, you know? So anyways, you can get ESLint to do that for you. Just like write a simple checker to say like, oh, you need to have your to-do. So I actually like that as like if I need to come back to something, anyways, it will complain and be like, oh, like you can't, it needs to have a ticket in it, which assuming you use tickets. So like we use Jira and our pattern is like MYVC or whatever. So basically it says like, hey, you have to have a ticket in there, right? And it could be whatever you want it to be, right? So that can be statically checked. And so something that I didn't know, or well, when I initially did this, and it kind of took me longer to actually add it, is that ESLint rules cannot return promises. They have to be synchronous. So, because if you can get what I'm about to say next, is you first get, so it's a two-part. You get it to check for the like non-ticketed to-dos. And the other thing is that like sometimes you have a to-do in your code that then like that ticket gets deleted, and now you have these like stale to-dos or tickets in your code base. Or for example, like you're working on ticket 1 and you're like, hey, I know in 3 tickets I'm gonna plug whatever this is in there, right? So then you go to that next ticket and then you forgot to go to your to-do that was there because nothing like checked you, right? So this is what I'm trying to get away from, is like guaranteeing that like people are not falling prey to this situation. So using some AST shenanigans, I thought it was called to-do checker. Oh, it's called check to-dos. Nope. Don't look at my code, it's proprietary. So using the, becoming more familiar, more comfortable with ASTs, this one's like dead easy. Another thing, oh yes, thank you for the call out. Another thing, if you ever write commanders. If you ever are writing, if you ever write CLIs for Node.js, 10 out of 10 would recommend Commander. It just makes it really easy to, if you need to accept parameters. Rather than just like parsing like argv or whatever. Okay, so what I'm after here is I want to ensure that there are no tickets in to-dos that are stale. So they're in like a to-do state. They're in a non closed development complete state. And so another thing that you'll learn here is that if there is an API for something, you should use it. So if you notice here, what I have here is I have my own Jira API, which funny enough, I have a coworker who's writing another Jira API thing, but it's my Jira token. And so I made a ticket to like be like, hey, can y'all make like a generic Jira token? So I'm just like commenting on tickets right now as like by proxy, I guess. My coworker is making me comment on tickets, just like build IDs and stuff. So anyways, so hopefully that stops. But anyways, so Jira has a straightforward API just to like, hey, give me a ticket and give me the status, right? So it's just a REST API. Use your token. Say, given this ticket, tell me like what is the status of this ticket. So I'll get to that. So it's this to-do checker. What it does is, if you're running in a branch, it will go and like it will look for like it will try to pull out a ticket out of your branch, and then it will go and find tickets that match to-dos that you're trying to merge. So that's the example of, hey, you have like, to do MYVC3, fix or plug this in, right? But you forgot to. It'll be like, no, you can't do that. Because the whole thing is I'm trying to be very like, when I write these things and do these things, I try to be like, I don't want to come with like a heavy hammer of like being very, I want to be wrong. It's okay to, I don't want to like block people. So we don't block merge requests from merging if like somebody else like, I don't know, like fixed a ticket. Like we don't want to be like looking for stale tickets in somebody else's code review and then they can't merge because somebody else like closed this ticket. So it's only looking for like your branch's ticket to make sure to be like, oh, you're not trying to merge in stuff here. So anyways, so, I got to start down here. So first, basically, this only runs when I merge to the main branch, which is called develop in my lingo. So if you hear me say develop, that's what that is. So I just use git ls files and say, give me all the JS, JSX, TS, TSX, and this gives me all the files for Git. And then I go in and every single of these files, I just say, hey, give me all these to-dos. So I read the file, plain text, and then I put it into an AST. And then that AST, I just have all these comments. So this AST maneuvering was a lot easier than the ESLint one, right? Like I can actually explain this to you. That one, I was like, I don't know, somebody else wrote that. But this one, you can just say, oh, like just go through all the AST comments and then find all the to-dos and then look for the tickets in the to-dos, right? So that's basically what this is doing. And then if it's the forbidden ticket, then like, do the forbidden ticket thing. Otherwise, like take that ticket and call the Jira API and tell me everything like, oh, are you, or which will tell me like the status of the ticket. And then it will run this thing. So anyways, this is some feature branch. I don't need to talk about the feature branch thing. But so I get all the ticket statuses and I look for it. Yeah, so these are like closed statuses in our Jira workflow. It's like, are you development complete, deleted, done, pending dependencies, closed. And then, so if any of those are true, then it's going to be like, hey, like invalid tickets. So let's try this. So if I go to like login.tsx, I'll zoom in. And if I say to do MIVC demo, and then let me run this. Damn. Well, maybe I didn't save. Damn. Oh, maybe I need to commit it. No, I don't know.
Are you sure that that ticket is closed?
That's a good point. I can't check because I'm not on VPN. Nice. It's totally broken right now. Yeah. But anyways, the idea that it works is cooler, right? Yeah, so anyways, yeah, I'll fix that in the morning. I'll come back next time. I'm just kidding. I'll get the same exact talk. Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, thank you. Anyways, yeah, so the whole point there is like, since ESLint can't return promises, that's why I wrote that thing. The one thing that I had that tripped me up for a while was give me all the files. And using git ls files was like the easy, like I made it so easy. Because when I was just like manually going through and then like using git ignores to like start ignoring files and stuff. And then once I realized like, oh my God, git ls files, like that was a lifesaver. So yeah. Any questions on this one? When it works, it's awesome.
Can you show it ESLint running the command?
Well, ESLint doesn't run this one.
Oh.
This is just a node script.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand now.
Yeah. So this is like on our, I'll show our GitLab CI, which, hey, I haven't had any issues with GitLab. I feel like it's cool. So you may hear me say merge request, because that's what it's called in GitLab. But anyway, so these are like develop checks. So we say like, hey, when you're merging to like develop or a release branch or a feature branch, then in one of these things, it's like, hey, yeah, check the to-dos that like you're doing this. Yeah. Okay. So no, I can't show that. Okay, so another thing is, so this one was like pretty big, is that on my team, like my Git history is like pristine and it's amazing. And I was always like, and it wasn't just vibes, it was like, I was just that good at telling people to write their Git history, like be good about it. Anyways, and it was funny as my manager was like, yeah, it's good now. And I'm like, I like took that personally, And because I look at the backend repos and I'm just like, it's not my problem. I don't care that your Git history sucks. I'm just gonna stick on my lane, you know what I mean? And so maybe that's what he was just trying to like motivate me. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do all of this. I'm gonna check that our Git history stays pristine. So like I said earlier, I work for a life sciences technology company, and we are regulated. So like if you can imagine the clinical trials, like we need, like the FDA needs to know that like when somebody said they took this survey, it's like they took that survey. So my company, like they pay people called validators that manually validate that like the features that we have work. And it's like separate from QA. It's just like people manually validating all these things. And it's like something with compliance. So with that said, the regulated environment means like we only release to product, like we release to our develop branches like, several times a day, but like to prod, like we have like monthly releases to like a fast train environment, but the slow train is like 3 times a year where like the customers get it. Because, it's like these B2B mega, Moderna, right? It's like they don't want this like fancy new feature. Well, I wish they wanted the fancy new feature. I work on the cool part, right? So anyways, like, they don't want to be blocked because they're getting all these new features and breaking prod, and they're like, well, I need to get this vaccine to market, right? So anyways, so because we're in a regulated environment, even like code that you merge, it needs to be like associated to a ticket. So how do you guarantee that? It's like, I couldn't find like direct APIs, like how to get that all to work. So, so I went in and wrote my own APIs to do it all. So let's go to that. So the main thing that we're after here is, the main thing that I'm after for the commit checker is, there's like a ton of rules that we have in it, but basically it's like your merge request title has a ticket. So if it has ticket MIVC 1000, and I know this one works for sure. If it has MIVC 1000, you also have a commit that says MIVC 1000, just at least one commit. If your merge request is set to squash. Because if it's set to squash, then it's like, it doesn't matter. You can put whatever you want in your merge request commits, right? As long as it's set to squash, what lands in the main branch, you're good to go because it's only one commit, right? But if it's not set to squash, then it like makes sure, hey, there's like every ticket that's in a commit is also in a merge request title. And all of that is so that Jira, there's like the Jira connection between the two. So it's like, hey, this ticket, when did it get merged? And it like shows everything. It's like this big graph and everything. And we also have some like QA requirements. Is that like when we build features, a product manager creates an epic. And then in that epic, they create stories, which are like the PM-driven stories, like do X, do Y, do Z. And then devs create dev stories that then say, okay, now doing X requires A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? So this also checks that like, hey, if you're in an epic, you have to be linked to a PM story. And then it also does like, hey, are you an active sprint? Like stuff like that. Is it in code review? All that kind of stuff. So that's like kind of what we're after here. So using the Jira API, right, I'm going to reuse my code all the time, like this, my Jira API. And then also I use just like a GitLab API, which is not my token. There's like an actual token. So, which funny enough, yeah, we use GitLab CI, but we also use some Jenkins stuff. So with Jenkins, it actually works pretty nicely is that you can trigger from GitLab to Jenkins a webhook, and then Jenkins just like runs a script. So it's kind of like nice because I can just point it to our web repo and it just runs like a node script. So you could see that commit, it should be right here. There's this Jenkins file that like triggers it, and yeah, so it's just running this TSX like main.ts, and anyways, so it takes the merge request IID, and then it runs this big like merge request get MR details. And then this is using this GitLab API that I will show briefly. Yeah, so this is just playing with GitLab. I just created a class that expects a token, project ID, and then I just have several. Let me show the structure. Oh no, I'm gonna just zoom in. But anyways, I have several things in here like get the changes in merge request, update the description of merge request, which I'll get back to, get the approvals for merge request, get the actual merge request, like list the jobs, which I'll get back to, like why I have that, give me all the notes. So you get the point. So I can do whatever I want to GitLab, just using this simple API abstraction I wrote. Okay, so anyways, we say, give me the MR details. So what this does is it's like, hey, don't run if it's a draft or it's not opened. State equals not opened. This could be like maybe if it got triggered while it was like merging or something. Anyways, so we get all the commits, and then we look in the commits and say, give me all the tickets that are in that commit, and it does that. Uses the Jira API. They're like working together, and then we look at the title of the merge request and we say, give me all the tickets in the merge request, and then it uses that then to, and then I have this single like get MR issues, which I wrote it like this so it's like it was easy a unit test because I can just like pass in like random stuff to be like, hey, when it's targeting release branch, the Axe checkbox needs to be clicked, stuff like that. So anyways, like this, I'll just show like a little bit and then move on. But this is the main thing is like, the first thing it'll tell me is like, oh, there's no tickets in your title. So it's gonna be like, hey, There's no tickets. Here's your title. So go update that. So you get the point, right? It's able to just check all these things, and our Git history has continued to be pristine. And this has been used for probably like the past 3 years. And it's like once you get used to it, it's like pretty straightforward because you just like follow the rules. But yeah, this has like been something that's been used for a while, and it's like probably like 100 devs that use it daily, like on all their merge request flows. Yeah. Any questions on this? Yeah.
Has it increased the time to merge, like your CI time?
No. Because like maybe like when you first join, because you're like, oh, I don't know all these rules, but it's like, yeah, but we're in the regulated, so you gotta get over it and just get into it. But like the script takes like 2 seconds, you know? Yeah. Yeah. But that is a good point. Is like you add this rule just for it to like slow people down. Like that's not what you want, right? That's the opposite of my talk, right? I need to be speeding people up, not slowing them down, which this one does kind of slow people down. So, anyways, okay. So it's talking about slowing people down. So Jest. So recently, so like I said, we have patient sponsors sites, right? And it's a monorepo, turbo repo, and all of a sudden, at one point, I couldn't track it down when, was sponsors started taking 15 minutes to run all its tests on Jest 29. And so I started like backtracking, like bisecting, like when did it get slow? I don't know when it got slow. And I never found out. So I just gave up and I upgraded Jest 30 and everything was twice as fast. So I'm not gonna tell you why it was slow because I don't know why it was slow. But I can tell you that if you're on Jest 29, migrating to Jest 30 will help. So how do I want to prevent this from happening again, right? Because that is a major, right? People are like, I want to change a button, and you're like, damn, it took 30 minutes to run all of our unit tests. So I was like, yeah, that was terrible, right? So I want to be speeding people up. So it's like, how do I prevent this from never happening again? The answer is DynamoDB. So I have a PostScript. So in Jest, you can, so if I look at my Jest config, there's like a custom reporter. So you can write your own custom reporters for Jest. And I'll get into like one that like somebody wrote that's like actually cool. I mean, this is like kind of cool. But all this does is it just like, in your coverage dir, it will write, I'll talk about Jest failures literally the slide after this, but it will write this Jest results.json and it will tell you like the status, how long it took, the start time, and the end time for each suite. And then it just stores it like in your coverage folder. Okay, and then in merge requests, and it's non-blocking, like I don't want to be like failing merge requests if for whatever reason it's not working. So what I do is I'm uploading all that stuff in, so I upload the suite you're running, so is it patient sponsors sites or one like shared, whatever. Your branch, when it started, your SHA, whether or not you're running with Axe. People know like Axe accessibility checker. Axe is like really slow for us, you know, because you have to like check all that static HTML. So we actually only run Axe like in the morning. We have it like disabled by default for merge requests because it's really slow. When it was reported, when it finished, how long it took, and then like the job ID for GitLab. So anyways, we'll see if this works. So let me use the Superior WebStorm. Using the, just like looking at the database here, is that I now have all this data, which I meant to look, well, I don't know if I have my AWS, oh no, it's still there. All right, let's do it, live coding. Live browsing DynamoDB, here we go. Let's look at the Jest metrics. So I wrote this, when did I do this table? It was just there. September 2nd? Yeah, September 2nd. So it's been like a month and a half and 18,000 items. So it's not terrible, right? It's like, and you know, we're never gonna pay, like this is like really cheap, right? Dynamo is meant to handle, well, you know, unless AWS goes down, of course. Never, just once every 3 years or so. So anyways, so basically when people are now like, I have, well, I can't remember if I made a separate slide. Did I make a separate slide for it? Or do I just talk about it now? Yeah, I'll talk about it now. Okay, so how am I going to prevent this from happening again? Whoops, I need to say, not share slideshow. First is that, like, you know, if somebody's upgrading React or something, you know, a new version of React comes out, whatever, something changes, right? That's kind of major, is that they can, using, you know, the DynamoDB table, because you could say like, hey, give me the branch develop, and this isn't like pulling everything, but we could say, and then like, I don't know, somehow just say, give me the last 7 days, right? And you can find like the mean and the median times of the last 7 days in develop. And then you upgrade React and it's like, hey, like, you know, in the merge request, you don't think it's like, you know, it's kind of negligible. And then you're like, okay, now let's set a reminder for 7 or 14 days from now and do it again to make sure it's not, you know, the times are kind of similar. And then I also, which I literally just made a to-do that while I was watching the lightning talks, that I'm getting annoyed of it, so now I'm going to do something else, is that email, yeah, I wrote an email thing, so it'll email me whenever something is too slow. So I created thresholds. Oh, this isn't on. Anyways, I'm not on. Oh no, I could just switch to develop. Here we go, this will work. Yeah, so I made thresholds for all of these to be like, hey, like if any of these are ever slower than like this threshold, then I'll get an email about it and it will tell me that it's too slow. But it's too chatty, and I don't know why. It's like sometimes it's like, yeah, I got one. It was like, oh, sites took 3.63 minutes or whatever, and I'm like, okay. And then yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I just need to up the thresholds, or I just need to do like a trends over time type of thing. So does that make sense? Like what I was after here? Cool. So is everybody really motivated? I'm going to start tracking your tests in DynamoDB now, or what? Yeah? I think I got one yes over there, right? Oh, damn. That is a solution. That is a solution. Yeah, right, less tests.
Wait, I have a question.
Oh, yes, yeah.
How do you track down the owners of the test to tell them your test is slow? So like the table has a, like the branch. So like I can find like when this branch, like I would be able, like, and it has a SHA. So there could be a git command I could use to be like, give me the SHA where they merge this thing. Yes, yeah. So I haven't really used, because it just started happening and I was like, I just need to start tracking this so I can use it, right? So I haven't like started actually using it, right? Or like doing something like that, but I could, given like the SHAs, I could backtrack like, hey, you added this test that increased the time.
Yeah, I think you could easily plug this into like Grafana too, and just.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll do that tomorrow. That's awesome.
The person that's responsible every 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. So fun. So you know, I gave that feedback about like good developers review code. Well, all my teammates suck, so they're not reviewing code. So at one point, I wrote a bot that was like, if a merge request had been open for a day but didn't have a reviewer yet, every hour it would at the entire team to be like, sign up to review this code, because it's like, I'm like, I got other problems to worry about. Anyways, so yeah, okay. So another problem that we have here sometimes with ours is like, sometimes the test is flaky, and it is so annoying, because it's like a flaky test is like, what's even the point if it's flaky? Because it's like, you don't know if it's actually working, like what's the problem? So I was like, you know what, I just did this whole Dynamo thing, so I'm gonna do it again, but I'm gonna do it with flaky test. So I wrote in that same upload to Dynamo, and that, well, first in that custom reporter is that like, I take the failures in the custom reporter and then I like map it into like a flat array, into this just failures.json. And then in the upload to Dynamo, I basically just say, hey, upload all the failures. So let me go find, yeah, so that's the thing that's funny is like my coworker was doing something where we're looking into using AWS RUM, and it was like, yeah, he went and had like, you know, a lot. Yeah, 98, because it's like, whoops, you made a mistake. And then, but hey, like develops only had one, right? And I saw this in one of my merge requests, and I just like, you know, we all do it. We just rerun and don't tell anybody that it happened, right? So eventually I want to add this has happened multiple times, and like, you know, every week maybe run a query that does that, and then it would just like, you know, then like I can go and delete the test. Either like if I can't figure out, because a lot of times just like, oh, you're missing a wait for or something like that. Or you just cannot figure it out, so you just delete it, and you're like, you know what, my life's better because of it. So yeah. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay, so stats distro. This is the thing I needed VPN. We'll see if it's still up. So in the vein of like slow, fast tests, so there's this cool thing. It's called Jest HTML reporters. So yeah, check it out. It's pretty cool. So it gives you this like kind of cool rundown of your tests, and you can like sort by like how long it took. So the way that Jest works is, or JavaScript, is that it's a single process, right? So Jest just spins up, it uses all your cores to spin up multiple processes. So if you have 16 cores, it's going to spin up multiple processes to run those tests. So if you had 1,000 tests, but only in 2 files, like you're kind of screwing yourself because Jest is just going to spin up 2 processes and run those, for however, it's just going to, you're like, yeah. So you want to have that in multiple files. So this is a helpful way to debug. So if you see here, this time says 2 minutes, 17 seconds, right? For one of our, for patients, I think. Yeah. And then the slowest test was this patient viewer test of TS, which took a minute. So that's actually pretty good. Is that like this? Because if the slowest test file was like 2 minutes and 15 seconds, then that's a big hint that like, ooh, that one could probably be split into multiple files. Because if it's split into multiple files, then it could get multi-processed. But so you're basically just like, you're beholden to like your longest like file that's taking. So this is like an easy way to visualize that. Prior to this, I would like manually do it. It's just like a lot easier way to do it. And I wrote a Lambda using the GitLab API to like, it will query all your jobs. So you can see like over time. So if you're like doing like, hey, I updated React and now I'm going to update or not update React or whatever, you can like compare and contrast easier. But I can't switch because I'm not on VPN, so you won't be able to like see what it, anyways. And then this is like, the monorepo. It's like every single thing you can, and I can't switch because again, I'm not on VPN, but each one of these will give you stats for every single like app or package in here. Yeah, does that make sense? Any questions on this? Cool. Okay, so yeah, back to some lint rules. So yeah, like ESLint is a thing, and there's newer things called Oxlint. So the whole problem with ESLint, why it's slow, is it's using Node.js, right? And you don't have to use Node.js to validate that your JavaScript is correct, right? Like you can use other things like Rust or whatever Oxlint and Biome are using. So there's newer tools, right, that are using other things than Node.js to like validate your JavaScript. So that's kind of like why it's faster at like the highest level, and then there's probably other lower level reasons why it's like faster. And I know we have a local celebrity I saw on like a random, Nathan Drake was on a random post about multi-threading. It's like ESLint can do like multiple processing something. No, yeah, it will like multi-process rather than just like a single process. So it is like a lot faster. Anyways, so the problem that I'm trying to show here is that like whenever you, like we just want to lint whatever changed. We don't want to lint everything. And there's something, so my understanding is there's something called lint staged. Now, I don't know if that, from what I read is that lint staged does not, it will only lint, like it's like a pre-commit hook. What I don't want, it's like, hey, you're trying to commit something and push it and you have to wait for your linter to run. I'm like, nah, that is not like my workflow. So I just wrote like a quick little script that in merge requests, it'll only run on like the actual changes. So using the GitLab API, as I do, I get the merge request changes, so it just gives me all the changes. I could have done like compare the SHAs, but I was like, you know what, it's a lot easier to do this because sometimes like the way that we release is like we release something to production and then it's like a long living branch and we don't touch that branch and we just keep merging to develop. And then if we have a bug, we like make a merge request into that branch. So anyway, so it's easier to just like, rather than trying to figure out like, what am I targeting? I just say, oh, just give me all the changes. So it just tells me all the files. So it just tells me all the files. I say, remove all the deleted files. I say, give me the new path. And then I basically say, all right, here's all my ESLint files, like all these random file changes. And then I'm only going to pretty or check HTML. For whatever reason, that's what we're doing. And I have all these change files. And then I basically say, hey, if any of my files happen to include like a prettier change or something in ESLint changed, then I'm just going to run everything because I don't want to, because the issue you have with like only running the changed files is like, what if your changed file changed the rules for everything, right? So it's like, and then you don't catch it till you merge. So I'm trying to catch it before we merge. So all of our ESLint configs are in packages/ESLint. That's where our custom rules are and where our custom config is. So when that happens, I say, oh, just run turbo run lint, which will run linter for everything. Otherwise, I use this, I loop through all my workspaces, which is like my apps, my packages, and I just like do some magical, let me remove the dynamo thing. I do some magical, like give me the file path is what I'm running at. And then in there, I also say, hey, like, did patient's ESLint file change? And if that changed, then I'm going to run the full linter for patients, right? Because I don't want people to merge and have to remerge whatever. So then I'm doing like, hey, do turbo run lint, filter, do patients. Otherwise, I'm like, oh, I'll just run ESLint on the files that change. So if you only change login.tsx, it's only going to run on login.tsx instead of like, on all of patients, which could take like, I don't know, a long time. Yeah, it probably takes like 30, 60 seconds. So it's like, did it really save that? I think, it was fun writing it. So this used to be a bash script as of like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, this probably doesn't have to be a bash script, especially since I could like use the APIs. So anyways, and then these are like smaller ones that are a lot faster. Yeah. Does that make sense? Any questions? Can you configure like an easier way to like lint changes with ESLint? So what is it?
Yeah, so most pretty your ESLint have a local cache that you just enable with -- cache. It would kind of do this, so it would only lint what is changed. So lint staged does this as well, but obviously you have to run a pre-commit, which is terrible.
Yeah.
But I think
I'll get to.
added -- cache, it would do the same thing you're trying to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I work at Beehive and we have a 700,000 lines of code client project, and that's why you migrate to OXE or Bio.
Yeah.
Because you can do the lint stage commands.
Yes. Yeah.
It runs in sub 1 second.
Well, yeah, so obviously like that would be great, but at the same time, like so some of those are still like, they don't support writing your custom rules, right? So it's like, how dare you suggest, I'm just kidding. That is a great idea, is migrating to that, right?
I was going to say OXE does support a lot of the ESLint rules now.
Didn't they they also just came out with another port that like you can run ESLint rules in, and they're like faster. But anyways, so, the whole thing, all this stuff is that like these enterprise projects, sometimes it's hard to move the needle. So it's like, it was faster to do this than migrate all of our shit to something else, which eventually we want to do. But for now, this is like a better alternative for now. Okay. So daily schema updaters. Anybody use GraphQL? Yeah, GraphQL. So I don't know why. I think it's great. So we're going to keep using it because I think it's great. So another thing that what I realized was like, I wasn't, where am I at on time? Oh, I'm doing great. I'll keep you all for another 30, 40 minutes minimum. So one of the things I realized was I was doing the whole vibes thing. We had a GraphQL best practices document. And I was like, damn, I could probably lint this. So I wrote a custom like GitLab multi-project thing where when you make a GitLab change, like in the GitLab repo, the backend repo, it will run TypeScript in like the web. So it will check your TypeScript types that like whatever schema you're proposing, it works. And I wrote some like linter rules where it's like, GraphQL is weird is that if you put a comment on the same line, when you introspect, it puts it below the line. Has anybody seen that before? Yeah, well, anyways, it's a thing. And so I wrote a lint rule that will like block you from that. Now the issue is that like sometimes a backend dev needs to merge a breaking change to your schema, like to the schema, so your TypeScript types are just not going to work with it. So I didn't want to block the backend devs from that, like being able to do that. So then it's like basically the idea is like it will fail with a warning and say, hey, this failed. And then ideally, their associated web dev working on the ticket with them can go in and, I'll have a merge request ready, that will fix that. Well, these people, they don't do that. So what I did was I said, the better, because it's one of the worst experiences when you're like, hey, I need the latest schema. So you pull the latest schema and you're like, some other thing completely unrelated to my thing is not working. Because like somebody broke like the schema with the TypeScript types. So I said, to hell with that. So I wrote my own schema, just another quick CLI, something, pull latest schema. So using the Jira API and using the GitLab API and using Matter. Yeah, okay, so here's the thing, is that my company is a competitor with Salesforce, so I can't use Slack. So we use Mattermost, which it could be worse, but it could be better. So anyways, so I also have a Mattermost API to like, ping my teammates every hour when they're like, hey, review my merge request. So anyway, so basically what this is doing is I look to see like, hey, are there any other MRs that are bringing this up to date? Because I don't want to like keep running it every day. So say we like left for Christmas or something. So it doesn't run. So we run PNPM schema, which what that does, oops, wrong one, is it runs this npm get GraphQL schema. So it just introspects and it puts it into the schema.GraphQL file. And then maybe there's a better way to do this, but the best I thought of was like, hey, just run git status, and if it includes nothing to commit, working tree clean, then you're good to go. So if that works, then you have nothing to do. It's just like the script stops. But if it does have a schema change, then I go in and I created a Jira function that like it will create a ticket to do the thing. Because right, it's like the commit checker is gonna be like, you need a ticket to do this, right? So, and then using just local git commands, I say, hey, I just made this ticket and I'm gonna check out a branch with that new ticket. I'm gonna add it and I'm gonna commit it. And then with git push, you can create a merge request with a git push, which is like pretty cool. And set your target branch and say, hey, remove it, and set your title. So I do that, and then maybe there's a better way to figure out what merge request I just opened, but this was the best I had, was like, hey, just list all the open MRs and go find it. And then I just post to our channel and say like, hey, go review the merge request. And so it runs like every morning, I don't know, like 6 a.m. And if like everything is green, it's like, sweet, we're all up to date on the latest schema. And people can just use it. But if it's breaking, then I go and find the person who broke it, and I'm like, you shouldn't have broke this. You should have like done. So I don't know. So I'm hoping this has been here for like a month or two. I'm hoping eventually people will like stop getting mad at me, like adding them angrily. Yeah. Any questions on this other than like don't use GraphQL anymore, because that's like, Okay. Code shifts. Yeah. So code shifts are great. So one of the things in my Okay, so I support multiple languages. People want to guess how many languages we support? 12. Something like that. It's like 90, I don't know. Yeah, so let me find, it's somewhere in here, IETN, languages. Yeah, so however many this is on the left, I can't zoom in on that part. So yeah, that's like a lot. It's like 90.
You don't mean programming languages.
What?
I thought you're asking about programming languages.
Oh no, I only know one, and I know two, English and JavaScript, or TypeScript, I guess. Anyway, so the whole thing, right, is like you have English, ENUS, and then you're like render it in Spanish, right? So we just have all these client files. It's actually pretty slick how it works, is that when we add a new key, there's a like downstream job, like some backend thing that like pulls those keys, and then we'll like send it to the vendor and we'll like request it. And then they can upstream make a merge request back into our repo with all the changes. Now, I wrote some validations for these changes. So are people familiar in that in some Asian languages, you don't go by Matt Crowder, like it's last name, first name, right? So when you have these linguists who will like write these, translate these Asian languages for us, they will do last name, first name, which is funny is if I go to any of these, they're not actually doing it. But anyways, so that's one of the things is like something that a language vendor may do is they may like translate this. So numbre de first, I don't know, whatever we don't want them doing that, right? We want them to keep it as first name, right? Or keep it as last name. So anyway, so I have a check like that makes sure like, hey, user popup.name in ENUS has two variables, first name, last name. And every associated translation, like EN Ireland or whatever, this Israel, what was it? Popup.name somewhere. First name, had it, I don't know, somewhere in here. I guess, oh yeah, user popup.name. It asserts that like, hey, first name, last name is in there as like variables. Like they can't change this to whatever they want. So, but the problem is that if a developer comes in and they're like, oh, you know what, the product needs have changed. I don't want first name, last name. I just want name, which again, I wouldn't recommend doing because some languages want to flip it. And then the unit test will fail because it's like, you have first name, last name in here, you don't have name, right? So you could ask your coworkers. So there's multiple ways to do it. One of the ways to do this is you could just switch the key. You could be like, oh, like name 2, and then you just like delete the ENUS one, and you're like, you're good to go. Or you could do something cool, and you could write a code shift to do this for you, and delete it on all the other files, right? So you're not always just like change, because then you're like, why do we have all these name 2s in here? Like what, at least to a cleaner code experience. So I tried writing it in just doing like manual, like give me all the languages and then like use an FS, like read it and then like change it and prettier it. But once I started trying to do that, it got really weird with like the whatever these are called. and I don't know why. Oh, template literals. I don't know why, or template strings. It got really weird with that. Like, it was like it would change them sometimes, then not other times. The code shift made it a lot easier. So anyways, let me just show really quickly is that, so if I had, okay, I swear this will work, so let me try it, is I have this delete messages. Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm gonna go into tools, delete messages, and I will do avatar, here we go. Look at that. Did it work? Maybe. Ooh, 80, okay, so we support 90 languages, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so you can see it deleted all those in there, right? So if you want to say, hey, delete all these, so then you don't have to worry about like the variable check because it's no longer deleted, and then that downstream backend service will then go in and add the thing back. So I guess for time, I'll just really, somewhere in here. So yeah, there's like the code shift that's just doing some traversing shenanigans to like, hey, like remove the key from the thing. And this was way better, easier with formatting. It was like, the formatting was a pain with the other way. Okay, so Turbo Repo. Yeah, so we use Turbo Repo, it's really cool. So the cool thing with Turbo Repo is like you have these cached inputs, right? And well, I could find like an example real quick. So we have Turbo runs, and I'll just pick a random run. So you see this, I have this MVMRC. So this is the like MD5 SHA representation of this MVMRC file. And then it takes, what I believe is like all of those MD5 SHAs and then creates another ID, which is this, the top one. And then basically it's like if any of these things change, then it's like that SHA is gonna change. So what Turbo Repo cool is it has like a remote cache. So the remote cache is like you could just put, it's like, hey, if this ID is, you could write into your cache, put all your stuff into the cache, and you could just read from it, right? Because it's going to deterministically create this hash over and over again based on the contents of your files. So it's like if a developer runs a build command on theirs, once it gets on CI, it's just going to replay that. Or if like another developer wants the same thing, they can also replay it. It's only ever happened once where it was like, I had a dev who didn't have his AWS creds yet, and I was like, hey, just like push it to Turbo Repo and then I'll run it again. And then, yeah, but otherwise I don't know how much it's saving for that. So I just want to share is that Turbo Repo, Vercel offers a free cache, which is like pretty cool, but it's like, I mean, I'm an enterprise regulated environment. I'm not about to go like give Vercel all my, I mean, we ship source maps, so I guess, they could just go and, but I'm not gonna like just like upload all my code, right, to like their free tier thing. So you know what I did, right? I wrote my own cache. So there's something called like Turbo Repo Remote Cache. Yeah, so we use this for several years, and it's just a node server that runs, and then you can have it proxy like S3. And we ran this for a while, but then the problem was like the server was running, it was just a pain like maintaining the own server, and then it was like, wow, this is still running node 14, which is like not ideal, because I just like never touched it. And so I wanted to put it into a Lambda. And they have a Lambda adapter, but the problem with Lambdas is they have a max payload side. It's like 10 megabytes or something. And so, I mean, we all write bloated JavaScript these days, 100 megabyte bundles. I'm just kidding. But like those HTML reporters, that's like a really big, like your coverage files, those are really big. So it's like those are part of your cache. So anyways, I just wanted to share, and I'm happy to share, if anybody wants this, is I wrote there's just like a tiny Hano server that Turbo Repo supports. If I go back to turbo.json, or no, turbo config, it supports pre-flight requests. So what that does is it will request it will do like an options request to your server first and request and be like, hey, like I'm open to like taking a different URL than the one you just gave me, or like than the thing I'm like requesting. So what you can do is you can write this tiny little script, this little Lambda function that basically given a hash, it uses this like pre-flight access control request method, like what is it about to do, is that you can just create signed S3 URLs. So when it says, hey, I want to look into the cache, you just give it a signed S3 URL, and it's your local machine to S3 looking for the thing, rather than like you querying something that then looks for it. And then same when you upload to S3, instead of like proxying through a node cache or a node server or a Lambda, you're just given a signed S3 URL to upload directly to that thing. Yeah, and it took like, I don't know, a couple hours to write this. There is like AWS has like a way to like just like create a signed URL, but for some reason I couldn't use the exact, think it's because like I had some issues with the team ID getting appended twice or something. But anyways, yeah. So I'm not motivated to make this into some open source thing. But you know, if anybody, I'm happy to just send you this code. So it's a Hano server, and then I just use like the Hano adapter. To just like, and then it just like handles that, like the whole, like converting the Hano server into a Lambda, and then for running it locally, it's just like using the Hano serve. Okay, so the last thing, I didn't actually share this, but no, I want to share it. Oh, wait, no, I did share this. Okay, so the last thing is developer tools, right? Which I guess is like kind of what I've been talking about, here's our app. So like you should have something like this, right? Where it's like just an easy access, like changing users, changing environments. So I originally used like React command palette, but it was like pegged to like it was using like component will mount, which like, did any of you even know what that, like, it's like, what does like Bain say, right? He was like, I was born in the dark or whatever. Yeah. Like, yeah, some of y'all don't even know about class components. Anyway, so it's like, I'll just like write my own little modal that looks kind of retro-y. So anyways, this is just like, if you don't already have this like in your like local build environment to like, hey, if I'm on a certain environment, I want to be able to hop between environments or users or experiences, like you should add it because it like greatly increases the productivity of whoever's using your stuff, but just don't ship it to prod. It's like, which like one time I didn't ship, like it didn't work in prod, but the bundle was there when I was using the React command palette. And like, yeah, our stock totally tanked. No, I'm just kidding. Like, yeah. So, anyways, yeah. So that is the entire talk. I hope everyone like feels a little bit more motivated. You know, maybe to increase developer productivity. It really is what like makes a difference, especially once you get like cross team impact. It's like kind of a big deal, which I have like a little of. So yeah, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.